Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're having a lovely day. Today I'd like to go over a video that showed up in Reddit, a Doordash driver that threw a fit after not receiving a tip. I'm going to be going over this from the perspective as a business owner. For those of you who are not familiar with this channel, I have not had a real job for probably like 15 years of my life. It was very difficult for me to find a real job, so I wound up starting my own business and working out of the park when I was broke, and then I slowly built that very slowly into the store that I have now with 6 employees. So I'm a little bit out of touch on the employee's perspective. I'm really going to be looking at this as a business owner. So let's watch the video and go over it from there. So he says, "This is effing ridiculous, dude." He puts the food down, and he proceeds to call the customer. And he knocked on the door very angrily.
Hi, it's saying 0 for the tip. Was there a cash tip?
He asked if there was a tip, and then he gets hung up on. He says effing loser, and the guy walks away. So there are a number of ways to go over this. The first thing that is aggravating to me above all else is that this man is mad at the customer rather than being mad at his employer. I have nothing wrong with him being mad at the fact that he believes his value is here and that the value he's actually receiving is here. I have no problem with people expressing that emotion, and I'm not criticizing him for having it. I'm simply saying that he should have that emotion towards the employer who is creating the economic model, setting the prices for the goods, setting the price for delivery, and then setting the salary that he pays the delivery person, rather than being mad at the customer. Now, yes, it is true that at the end of the day, the customer is the one that's actually paying you. Your employer is simply a middleman, but your employer is the one that is directly responsible for creating the economic model, setting the prices, and so on and so forth. If you are not receiving an amount of money that is proper for you, you need to walk into your employer's office and have a conversation about that with your employer. The customer is not the party that has anything to do with it. This is like if you are not getting enough sex from your spouse, so you go to your spouse's employer and talk to them. It's like, this is a negotiation to be had with your spouse and nobody but your spouse. Here, if you're not being compensated enough as an employee, this is a problem between you and your boss and nobody else. And the wool that tipping culture has pulled over everybody's eyes is it causes employees to be mad at the customer rather than be mad at their boss. I have nothing wrong with you being mad because you think you're not getting enough money. Go to your boss, ask them for more money, and have a conversation. Try to negotiate how to get more money. Ask them, what can I do? What can I do to provide enough value to you that you are open to providing me with $3 extra an hour? Can you tell me what it is that I would have to do for you? What sales targets I'd have to hit? How fast I'd have to make deliveries? What can I do to help you around here with things in general to be worth that additional $3 an hour? And if they tell you, here's what you do, now you know. If they tell you there's nothing you could ever do to us to be worth more value, now you know your boss doesn't value you and that you should be mad at them, not the customer. When it comes to tipping culture in general, tipping culture does have a place in society. Like, for instance, if I go to my mechanic and I'm just expecting to have some $500 or $1,000 bill because I went over a pothole or something and I hear some clanging, and he says, "Oh yeah, I just tightened this nut or this bolt that was like a little loose. Don't worry about it. Don't pay me." He's leaving with $100 of cash in his pocket. No way in hell am I going to leave that situation where I was expecting to pay $800 and I'm paying $0, and he did work using his expertise without getting money. There, tipping culture, great thing. I'm happily giving him $100 or hiding it somewhere in the garage if he doesn't accept it because in my opinion, he deserved it. That's value for value right there. But this whole thing where like you're required to leave a tip, as in somebody comes to my business, I tell them it's going to be $200 for this repair. They pay the $200 and my employee gets mad at them because they actually pay what they asked for. This is BS. And like, this is something that really does kind of have to go away. And one of the fastest ways to make this shit go away is to make sure that people's anger is directed where it belongs, which is at the employer. The customer should be mad at the employer of the business, not the employee, for demanding a tip, and the employee should be mad at the employer for not paying them enough, not the customer for not leaving a tip. Both parties involved in the transaction, the customer and the employee, need to stop fighting each other and take that anger and aggravation they have and focus it where it needs to be focused, the employer. Make them responsible and accountable to come up with a business model that works. Now, the next thing I'd like to go into in this video is the fact that I think this person knew that they were probably doing something wrong within this particular value system that we have, and I just would want to go over what I would do in a similar situation here. So at this point in the video where he hangs up, so the guy says, like, is there a tip? Clicked on him. It doesn't say, the customer said, well, I actually paid $30 for the food, which I think is fair given what I bought and the fact that I'm 3 blocks away. If you believe that that is not enough money, I think you should go to your employer and ask for more money rather than be mad at me. Rather than actually explain himself, the customer just hung up. And just, which I think is kind of lame. And I think that, I'll just try to tell a story here. This comes from Jim Camstar with Noah. It's at the end of the book. I don't want to spoil the book, but he's talking about a conversation that his father had had with a contractor. He moved, contractor did some work for him, and the contractor asked him once the work is done, hey, what do you think? Was this a good job? How'd it go? And he's like, oh man, you did a really amazing job. Thank you so much. And then instead of just letting that be the end of it, the person who hired the contractor says, how about you? How'd you make out in this deal? Do you think it was fair? How was your experience of the project? And the contractor was taken aback, like, wow, you actually care how my experience was. And he goes, well, I'll be honest with you. Here's what I miscalculated. I screwed up. So I kind of lost some money in this deal. It was kind of a wash for me. And then the person who hired the contractor says, man, I'm sorry to hear that. Would $400 make up for your loss and also allow you fair profit for your time today? And the guy was absolutely stunned because nobody does this. And he's like, well, yeah, that would. And they wound up having a lifetime of having a positive working relationship together. And what he was doing was he was a person that was used to asking for value, and he had no problem asking for value when he was providing value. But the reason he felt empowered to do that is every single time that he was receiving value from somebody else, he made sure to pay for that in return. And if he was even had a teeny tiny bit of doubt that what he paid was lower than the amount of value that he received, he made sure to pay that back. And this is something that I've done myself. So for instance, there's a restaurant around here, Texas Roadhouse. Again, you can laugh at me for liking Texas Roadhouse. Yes, you're allowed to laugh. There's something particular about the salad there that I like. I don't know what it is. It's obviously clear. It's fast food, but there's something about this steak salad that I like. So I go there from time to time. And when I go there, I would ask some of the people that are behind the counter. I'm just like, I like to ask questions about business. I mean, anywhere I go, I try to be friendly with people. And I said, I'm curious, do they pay well here? And they laughed, and I asked how much they paid. And then I'm like, oh my God. It was like horrifically low. It was less than what I made at my internship at Avatar Studios 15 years ago, which is, it should tell you everything. And so every time I go there, I typically give them a tip of $10 to $20. Now, this may seem insane, but to me, the way I see it, I have two choices. Behind door number one, the people who work there are not being provided with the amount of value that they are providing me. So it's my responsibility to fill in the gap. Behind door number two, I can realize that every time I go here, I receive more value than I am giving them. Therefore, I will just stop going there because the people who are providing me with what I want are not being compensated properly. So I am not going to take part in that business relationship anymore. I'm not going to go there and say, well, I'm not tipping because I shouldn't have to. I'm simply not going to go there because I realize that the person behind the counter that's actually doing the work is getting paid $2 or $3 an hour, which is bullshit. And I'm just not going to go there. Those are the two acceptable options for me. It is not an acceptable option for me to show up and say, I am going to pay what you asked, but I am not going to tip because I know, even though technically I'm allowed to do that, I know the person that is providing me with that value, that is providing me with that food that I like for whatever effed up reason in my head that I like Texas Roadhouse and my bad taste buds that I have, that I like that stuff. I know that they're getting paid shit. And once I have that knowledge that person's getting like $2 or $3 an hour, I can't enjoy what I'm getting. So I leave a tip between $10 and $20 every time I go there. You may think that's ridiculous, and perhaps it is. Perhaps I should not eat out at the frequency that I do when I go to that particular restaurant. But when I go there, that's usually what I leave because I think that that is fair. Even if I'm sitting at the bar and literally just buying myself a salad. I can't live with the idea that I am receiving value from people and not providing value in return to them. Now, this is not because I am a goody two-shoes. This is not because I'm a good or altruistic person. As I've mentioned in many of my videos, I'm a giant piece of shit. Don't admire me. Don't look up to me. I do this because by doing this, it empowers me to ask for value when I know I'm providing it. When I first started this business 15 years ago, I was very timid. I wasn't very good at asking for the amount of value that I knew I was providing. I would often underbid my services, and I would make sure that I was not just the cheapest person, but I was the cheapest person by a margin of 20 to 40%. I needed to be the cheapest person. And what happened as a result of me doing that was that I could not afford to hire an assistant. I couldn't afford a proper office. I couldn't afford any of the help that I needed or the tools that I needed to be able to do a better job. And as a result of that, I eventually started to underserve my customers. I was actually doing worse work because I was underbidding not just the job, but myself by such a high amount of money. And it was a confidence problem. It was a value problem. And one of the things that really helped me to ask for the value that I knew that I was worth, even when I was no longer the cheapest service, and have no shame anytime somebody went, well, that place is $20 cheaper, I'm going to go there. Instead of me going, okay, sir, I'll lower my price because I know I'm not worth it. It empowered me to go, well, gargle my balls, go over there, let them fuck up your shit. I don't care. What allows me to unload and just not feel bad in any way, shape, or form when somebody says that I should be billing them only $200 for a hard drive that is clicking, that has platter damage and stuff like that, is realizing that anytime I'm receiving value in my life, that I provide that value in return. As a result, I feel empowered and confident to say, this is what our price is for this service. We are already 10 to 20% the price that a place like Drive Savers is going to charge you. We are much cheaper than these people. We have a much better success rate than these people. I know exactly how much time Steve and Chris and Orhan have spent teaching themselves this skill and perfecting this skill. I know how much money I've spent on tools for this skill. This is what we are worth. And the reason that I feel empowered to ask what we are worth is because I am always ensuring that I am providing other people what they are worth. It's not about altruism. It's about empowering yourself to be the best version of yourself and to value yourself in a way that you're not going to value yourself if you're not valuing others. How can you expect to ask people for value in exchange for the value you provide if you're not willing to provide them with the value that they provide? What empowered me to ask for the value that I knew I was worth was that in every single scenario where I was receiving value from somebody else, I made sure to provide them that value back. If I'm ordering food and I'm paying like $9 for the food and it's like 5 miles away and there's no delivery fee, I'm not stupid. I know that something there is not right. I know this is too good to be true. I know somebody has to be getting fucked. For me to do that and leave no tip. And then when the guy says, hey, by the way, saw you put cash tip, is there a tip? To not even explain the rationality behind it. To just hang up on the person, I think that's kind of shitty. To be clear, the employer in this situation is way worse than the person hanging up the phone. There is a very large gap. The person who hung up the phone, a little crappy. The employer, fuck the employer. The employer in this situation is like 80 times worse than and the people that are reporting tipping culture in general are worse than that. But I think that's kind of crappy. I have a very value for value like mentality. As I said in my recent video, I paid for YouTube Red for 6.5 years, and I didn't even use the features simply because YouTube was a service that I used on a regular basis. I liked it. It provided me with value. So I figured, here, what is $10 a month for something that I actually enjoy, that I use? I stopped using it because YouTube Red was fucking me and not allowing me to watch my own damn downloaded effing videos. But that was a discussion for another video. I don't mind paying when I receive value, even if I have the ability to get it cheaply or for free. And it's not because I'm rich or anything like that. It's because it actually changes the way my brain works. It allows me to advocate for myself in a way that I was unable to advocate for myself before. And I think that's an important thing and it's worth considering. If you are entering business relationships where you know 100% that the other party is screwing themselves in some way, shape, or form, be wary of it because something like this may occur. And further, if you are the employee in this type of relationship, make sure you have a conversation with your employer. Don't think that you can just get away with doing a crappier job and that's fine. Because at the end of the day, the person on camera acting like this is you. The person's face in the camera is not your employer, it's you. You're lowering your personal standard of conduct. You're lowering your dignity. You're upping your blood pressure and your pulse, getting mad over all this stuff because your employer sucks. If you are willing to work to a lower standard like this because you did not negotiate a proper wage for yourself, again, it's one of those things where you either have to accept what it is that you're getting or not accept it and walk away. But to not accept it and kind of stay in the situation, it's kind of like staying in a relationship where your boundaries are constantly being crossed. Eventually, you're going to say or do something you're not supposed to do, and then you'll be the asshole, and then you'll regret it because everybody else is going to look at you like you're the asshole, when in reality, you aren't the asshole. You just let your boundaries get crossed, and then you allowed yourself to devolve into something that you never imagined yourself being. Same thing in a working relationship. Me personally, when I was ordering food from restaurants like this, I would never tip up front because if you leave the tip up front, they don't have to care how slow they are in delivering your food. I would always leave a 0% tip, but then I would put in the notes, cash, please knock on door, 4th floor. This does two things. A, it lets you know that I intend to tip, but you're not going to know what you're getting unless you actually show up. B, that I expect you to walk up the 4 flights of stairs to get to my apartment, not leave the food downstairs. And this was very effective. So what people would do is they would, before that, if I left a tip, regardless of how good the tip was, it would sometimes take an hour and a half for me to get the food. It could be cold. You may just leave it downstairs instead of walking it up. Once I started actually saying this was very helpful because the food would show up in 10 or 15 minutes. They would actually walk it upstairs. And when they did, I would leave them $10 cash. Every single time you walk the food up to my apartment, here's $10. Thank you for doing that. Even if I was ordering a $9 burrito, here's a $10 tip. Now, if you left the food downstairs and just sent a message, food is downstairs, you didn't get shit. But that was the way that I used to do it. And 99% of the time, they would actually show up and do that. I understand why people do not leave a tip when they're using these apps. And if anything, I encourage you to use cash tips rather than actually leaving it ahead of time, because if you've tipped ahead of time, then what's the incentive structure for them to do a good job or to provide you with good service? I mean, most of the time when you're using these apps, it's not even the same person that's going to be delivering every single time. So it's kind of one of those things like you're tipping a random cab driver where they're never going to see you again. So if you're tipping up front rather than after, it doesn't really make as much sense for them to offer you good service. So by all means, if you're going to be dealing with the tipping culture, I highly suggest that you structure it in a manner where the person giving you service is incentivized to give you good service. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think of this? Do you think that it's wrong to be mad at the employer rather than the customer? I think that they should be mad at the employer. I genuinely think that all of these negotiations need to happen with the employer. Both the customer and the employee need to both look at the employer and let them know what's wrong and make sure that the onus is on them. I am sick and tired of this bullshit where I go to some place, I pay for something, and they turn a tablet to me and it's like, do you want to leave a 25% tip, 35% tip, or 45% tip? Because we don't actually pay our waiters and servers here. You have to do that on top of the price you paid. I'm sick of that shit. I want to be able to hit the 0 button and feel good doing so. But the only way that's ever going to happen is if the employees decide, you know what? I'm not going to work here if you don't value me properly. And the customers say, you know what? If you don't value your employees properly, I'm out of there. Which is something I'm trying to get better at myself. I'm admittedly trying to get better at this. I'm trying to limit my consumption to where I'm purchasing from places where I do not have to leave a tip. Or if I leave a tip, it's because it's optional, because the employees of the business are actually getting compensated something that is not complete and utter dog shit, like $2 an hour or some garbage like that. And don't hit me with the whole, well, technically by the law, if you don't make that in tips, your employer has to make it up. Because I know how that works. I'm 100%, I know how that works. The person that asked that 2 or 4 times to have that made up is always the person that winds up getting fired. So I've been around the block a couple of times. I know how that works. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.